Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, Ed, aka SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. Welcome to another episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast. I am your host, Ed Ciucevich, and on this short episode, we're going to be talking about the passing of a total icon in comics, in film, but mainly in comics and storytelling. A gentleman who gave a lot of people growing up their actual story of their life, in a sense. And this gentleman is none other than the wonderful Stan Lee. And Stan Lee, it just really goes without saying how important he was as an influence on so many people, not just young people, but people in general. And the thing about Stan Lee, he didn't do it all on his own. He did it along with Jack Kirby and some others and people at Marvel there. But Stan Lee was not afraid to tackle tough issues. Issues like racism, disenfranchisedism, a lot of isms, I guess. And he meant so much to people. And at the time, he wanted to do something more important. He wanted to do more important writing. He didn't really see at the time when he started out that there would be a future in writing for comics because they weren't really respected back then in the way they are now. And Stan Lee, in fact, his name was Stan Lee. And so he just kind of split that up and said, okay, I'll be Stan Lee, L-E-E. And that way, kind of as a pseudonym, but mainly to kind of disassociate himself from the genre that he was creating. And so that goes to show, be proud of the work that you do, because you never know what relevance it may have. And you may not actually see it yourself. You might not actually experience how important your contributions truly are in creating things. And that's what Stan Lee did. He did it so wonderfully, and he changed so many people's thoughts about things and what comics could be and how they could inspire people through, his writings and creating those wonderful stories. And like I said, Stan Lee was never one to shy away from any of the social topics of racism. I mean, he was writing Black Panther he created, which is, I think, at present date, the most profitable box office, at least domestically, right above Avengers Infinity War. It did like 1.3 billion. And I know that Avengers Infinity War worldwide did about 2 billion or so. But, look at Black Panther, another character like Iron Man, like a lot of the characters that weren't at the forefront, like X-Men. He's outdone everything in X-Men. He created so many things in Marvel Stan Lee is responsible for, or had a very important hand in, talking about. And he did that. He was able to just transcend time and space. He created so much that it was just amazing what he got done, and how he crafted a world where his heroes had real everyday real world problems, and he didn't shy away from that at all. He didn't look the other way. He fought racism head on. He fought Nazism back in the 40s, Captain America taking on Hitler, and DC was doing some of that too, like Superman, and all that in different comics. But and some would say there's more of a realism in DC, maybe a grittier version of the world, minus Superman that's supposed to not be gritty, but in the latest incarnations of movies, Superman's been grittier than a lot of fans would really prefer, but not making fun of or marginalizing the great work that the actors have done, like Henry Cavill. But when we think about it, DC, or when I think about it, DC has achieved some great things. Marvel has the movies down. They know how to world build, and they planned almost 10 years out what they were ambitiously wanting to do. And with the power of Disney behind them and just good scripts and good, teams full of filmmakers, they did a wonderful job with building an entire universe off of Iron Man, off of Robert Downey Jr. Think about that. If in 2008, if Iron Man wasn't a success, then we'd have no DC Extended Universe or not DC Extended Universe. We'd have no Marvel Extended Universe. We'd possibly have a DC Universe, but, it's nothing to do with Stan Lee. But the fact that Iron Man worked so perfectly and is still, to me, one of the best movies now in the whole 18, 19 movies, including Infinity War, that we have out there. We've got Captain Marvel coming up, and then we have the fourth Avengers movie that's, as we know, untitled. But before we hit the end of the year, we're supposed to get at least a teaser trailer of some sort. So I know they were filming back-to-back pretty much Avengers Infinity War and the fourth Avengers. And, there was talk of it being part 1, part 2. Originally, it was conceived that way, but now I think it's going to be an even greater story. And there's a possible running time of 3 hours. Of course, they'll cut that down. And they originally had said that, I think, for Infinity War when it was being made. But the Russo brothers are doing a fantastic job on that, getting Infinity War to be what it was. It's still that snap heard around the world when Thanos sent or disintegrated, as they want you to believe, but that's not really, or maybe it is what happened, and that's the thing versus, DC versus Marvel. They always say there's no consequences in Marvel movies. I went into Civil War knowing what in the comics that Steve Rogers died. And I think then Bucky took over, and then later on the Falcon took over as Captain America. But I thought, it was going to be the end of Chris Evans, and thankfully he made it to Infinity War. He got through Civil War. But they didn't, I like that they didn't gloss over that, when Bruce comes back from his stint on, which would kind of be like Planet Hulk in a way, and we saw kind of that storyline played out in Thor Ragnarok, which was wonderful and refreshing as a movie, and revitalized the Thor series of movies. And so looking at all that, thinking about that, we ended up with a different look for Thor Ragnarok. So worked very well. And that's the thing about, some of the Marvel movies. Iron Man 2, not as good. Thor the Dark World, which was a second film, not terrible, but still not that good. So it seems like and for me, Iron Man 3, a lot of people didn't like it. I didn't like what Shane Black did with the character of the Mandarin. I've said that before, but it still was okay. Still the first Iron Man, probably still one of the best movies, definitely in the top 10 if you have to, and which I think I did a previous episode here on Geek Homeworld where I talked about how that, it's one of my favorite Marvel films. And so, with that all being said, Stan Lee built a universe. He was good at his cameos were something that we look forward to, kind of like we look forward to Tom Cruise in a Mission Impossible movie doing his own stunts and topping himself each film, which is incredible. And that's kind of like seeing Stan Lee. And I have heard that there's about at least Captain Marvel and the Avengers 4 that Stan Lee had done cameos, and I think they were forward thinking. So of course I think Captain Marvel will be the next movie. So I'd imagine that there would be a big, to do about Stan Lee, maybe at the end of the movie, after the credits, and whatever scenes. And definitely, I'm sure they'll dedicate the film to him, something of that sort. And I feel like on Avengers 4, they would definitely do something. It feels like, if Avengers 4 came out next and then Captain Marvel, I feel like Avengers 4 being more of a tentpole movie. Not that Captain Marvel won't be, but I feel like it would mean more if it were in Avengers 4 when they did the homage to the great Stan Lee. So I know there's been some hate out there against Stan Lee saying, hey, he didn't do it all by himself, and he didn't. But he was a major force behind creating all these characters, and a lot of the press does say that, it's all Stan Lee. They forget about Jack Kirby, and yes, Jack Kirby was very important in those roles, and Stan Lee couldn't have done it without Jack Kirby. But, the Stan Lee, that still does not take away from the brilliance and the realness that he put into characters that he wrote. Fantastic Four. I mean, the list goes on. Thor, the Amazing Spider-Man, obviously, which I think he said it was his favorite hero. Peter Parker dealt with acne. He dealt with real world problems. He dealt with, can I get to class on time? Someone with superpowers had everyday problems, everyday issues. And that's what made Stan Lee so important as a storyteller, even though he did kind of realize it at first, I think, but he grew into it, and he wrote really wonderful, empowering stories, and stories that reflected the time that he lived in and the times that we live in now. And these stories are immortal, as he'll be in a sense. I like to think of Stan Lee in that scene. I think it was in Guardians 2, where he's with the Watcher, and they kind of confirmed, okay, he's talking to the Watchers there. So it kind of says, Stan Lee as a character, whether he was mistaken in one of the Iron Man movies as Hugh Hefner, and he was, a mailman in, was it Civil War, when he said, I have a package for Tony Stank, and it's so funny, was it Don Cheadle? He says, yes, this is Tony Stank. And so, and there's a lot of favorite cameos, a lot of fun ones, and he was in a lot of them. One of the important ones was in Age of Ultron, I believe it was, and where he was playing a war hero. He's with other war heroes, and he was doing shots and stuff like that, and Thor's like, you're immortal, you can't handle this, and he's like, I can handle it. And then towards the end, he gets two scenes, and that's, by the way, Stan Lee's favorite cameo was that in Age of Ultron, because he said he had two scenes. Mostly it was just a one scene, or you see him like in the Incredible Hulk movie, you see him drinking the contaminated soda or whatever that had some of Bruce Banner's blood in it, so he didn't Hulk up or anything, but it like implied that something to that effect. But Stan Lee did much to further a lot of causes and to bring and shine a light, shine a light on those issues. And it can't be stated enough how much of an impact that Stan Lee had and still will have into the future on our national consciousness. I wish we could be more like some of the characters in his comic books and graphic novels that, realized the differences in each other and appreciated those differences. And, maybe we'll get to that day where we'll realize, that we all can coexist and live together and we can all be, united as one. That would be a wonderful thing. And I know Stan, that would be something that Stan would certainly hope for. And so it really goes without saying how important the influence of Stan Lee is and will be in the future. And I look forward to those cameos. I know, there's going to be a lot of fanboy and girl tears shed when they see Stan Lee's name. And it'll be weird to see a movie, even if it's got a Stan Lee cameo. And we all knew this day would come because the gentleman was 95 years old. So that's a really good life lived, But to see those cameos or those homages to him on the big screen and knowing that he's no longer with us here. But even worse when those cameos run out, when there aren't cameos, when there's a Marvel film and no Stan Lee cameo in it. So I'm sure they could do a lot of things, but, Stan Lee left an indelible mark upon the consciousness and the, just the overall feelings and of those young kids. He really, I was one of them. I grew up reading Spider-Man. I would read Spider-Man, Batman comics, the Hulk. I would have, Superman, which is DC and stuff like that, and Batman. I know that, but, I loved comics growing up. Like, what kid wouldn't? And they're even more popular now. I remember the 90s, the kind of, in my lifetime, the golden age of comics, where the industry kind of ruined things because, they put so much stuff in print. That was like the death of Superman. Superman was like all powerful and overpowered, and then Doomsday comes along, and that's still the best-selling graphic novel ever. And I think you could probably put The Killing Joke up there as, for DC. So DC has some good material and they have great heroes, but what they're able to do versus what Marvel has done, and with Disney's help now owning Marvel, it's just, they're two different worlds. And it seems like Marvel clicks with audiences, and there's always a hope and optimism. Even in Civil War, when I was afraid, going by the comics, that Steve Rogers would make it, and he did, to Infinity War, and maybe Avengers 4, I think he's in that, and then whether it's time travel, flashback, or whatever. And then after that, I think Chris Evans is kind of done with the comic book movies, and, that's fine and dandy. He'll always be Captain America, and a character that's become more popular, I think, because of the seriousness that he took to the role. And, that's like Chris Hemsworth made Thor very popular, and I love the way that Thor was finally treated like, the god of thunder that he is in Infinity War, and he's like very important to that storyline. And there were a lot of storylines. You figure 10 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that they had to put into one movie. They didn't have to, but that was the plan. Now, Civil War, I heard, was kind of the trying out more than a couple heroes on screen at the same time, like a dozen of them, and it worked well. So it worked even more, even to a deeper extent when we get to Infinity War. So very, very, very excited about that whole process there. And when I think about, what they were able to achieve in Infinity War is amazing. And I'm excited for the future of Marvel films and seeing this whole new generation of heroes. I'm going to be sad when Tony Stark is gone or Robert Downey Jr. I mean, when he's not doing them anymore. He may continue on for years to come and just do a cameo, like he did in Spider-Man Homecoming. That made it all the much better just to see him, a little bit of screen time, pop in for a day, shoot a couple scenes. That's cool, kind of like Stan Lee. He could be like Stan Lee, And so that thread of Tony Stark still runs through the entirety of Marvel. And so Stan Lee, can't underestimate or even overestimate the importance of what he created in his lifetime and what it means and what it will always mean to everyone who's read Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, Thor, Fantastic Four comic or graphic novel, who's read, Guardians of the Galaxy. Talk about an unknown quantity. Hardly anybody knew about the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's become one of the biggest franchise in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, we've got a lot of characters that are not so well known that may be coming, like the Celestials will be in some of the next phase, maybe part of phase 3 into phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so, we're going to go into some deeper spacefaring stuff and not so much everything on Earth here. I mean, there's so much territory, quite literally, to explore in the universe of comics and in the Marvel universe. So, that's a very, very important aspect, a very important thing to look at in the whole realm of what's to come. So on Stan Lee, I really can't say much that anybody else hasn't said. We knew this day would come, that he would pass, and we're thankful as fans that we had Stan around as long as we did. Now, I have a friend or two that have met him at some Comic Cons and different things, and on their social media have pictures with them. And Stan Lee just touched a lot of lives. He was so important to so many people without even realizing it, but I think he did realize it. And he appreciated every fan. I never, of course, got to meet him, but Stan Lee, from everything I've heard people say, that he was just the kindest, most gentle person, and you were like the most important person when he was talking to you at that moment. And, he would thank the fans. He would thank you, face to face. It's like meeting one of your heroes, and your heroes, not a situation where your heroes didn't, live up to your expectations. They may have exceeded it. And this is what Stan Lee did. He treated every fan. He loved it. He loved the attention, and there's nothing wrong with that. He could stand on his own merits of what he created, what he did as a creator. And so let his life be an inspiration to everyone, that if you're out there struggling, if you're trying to make it in the publishing business, if you're trying to make it in the film industry, if you're just in your everyday job, whatever it may be, whatever talent you have, don't waste it. You should spread it with the world. You should share it with the world. And your talent can inspire others to greatness and to achieve wonderfully great things. But if you don't share it, no one's ever going to experience your talent and know what your talent can do. And you'll never realize it if you don't take that initiative. So there's an empowerment in the life of Stan Lee. And he was not afraid, like I said, to tackle those tough issues, those tough situations that other people just would not, touch. They wouldn't, talk about so much. I mean, he, can you imagine Black Panther, is probably one of the prime examples. He's showing a positive reflection of what a group of people that have been marginalized in their lives. And you don't even have to be of that racial makeup, as it were, to understand it. You appreciate it more, I would imagine. But everyone has felt like an outcast. Everyone's felt like they've been marginalized, that they don't matter, that, their opinion really means nothing. And I think Stan Lee speaks to the fact that you do matter, and everything you say and everything you do does make a difference. It can make a difference. And it can make a difference in everyone's life. You just have to believe in yourself. And, like Stan said, Excelsior, he created that because people would take his lines like "nuff said" and stuff like that, and they'd use them over and over. And so he came up with Excelsior. It was a word that really didn't mean anything, but it was truly something Stan, So if you heard Excelsior, you would know that's something Stan Lee would say. And so he coined that phrase, as it were. And so you need to find what you're good at and what kind of phrases or things in your creative way, I think, that would be your Excelsior. So that's my question to you all. What's your Excelsior? So to the great Stan Lee, thank you for years and years of such wonderful creativeness, for inspiring so many, and for the roadmap you laid out for future creators to create wonderful, uplifting stories of courage, of overcoming obstacles, of overcoming things in our mind, things in our spirit, and things that hold us back as people, as a civilization. I think I can't say enough thank you to Stan Lee for allowing us to dream, allowing us to be kids, to say it's okay to fail. It's okay to, make a mistake. At least you know that you've tried, and you know that it makes a difference in what you have said and what you do and how you treat others. And there are consequences for your actions, but you can be someone entirely wonderful, and your contributions can be so vital, so important to others around you, whether you realize it or not. And Stan Lee was a great ambassador, maybe as it were, for living your dream, making your dreams happen, making them occur, bringing them to fruition, and sharing those dreams with the world so that you can inspire others. And I can't think of a greater thing that you can do but inspire others to see the greatness in themselves, especially when they can't see it in themselves. If you can be like Stan Lee, then I think you're just doing a wonderful job there of inspiring others. So anyway, that's enough about Stan Lee. I could go on and on. A lot of us could. But thank you, Stan Lee, for all that you've done, for just creating worlds and infinite universes, and populating them with real people who, even though they had supernatural, fantastical powers, they were still human at their core. They were still, even if they weren't technically human, they still had human-like issues that we could all, even in our adult lives, identify with, frailties, problems with character, our characters maybe, and things that we see in ourselves that we want to change and we want to be better about. So I think Stan Lee was probably one of the best ambassadors for that, for helping us realize our dreams. So let us know what you think about this, and I'm going to end the episode now, but just another thing we're going to throw out there, some of the movies I've seen recently that have really impressed me. One of them I was looking forward to is, and this is changing gears a little bit, but Bohemian Rhapsody with Rami Malek did a fantastic job. I'm saying worthy of an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, easily. If he wins it, don't know, but very good film, wonderful film, celebrating the life of the great Freddie Mercury. So if you hadn't seen it, you should check that out. I think so. And I was very pleasantly surprised with Tiffany Haddish. She, I haven't really been a fan. I didn't really know much about her. I did see her in Night School, and I thought she was very funny. But I saw Nobody's Perfect. And yes, it's a raunchy movie, so it's not for the kids. But she steals every scene that she's in, and Tiffany Haddish does such a wonderful job. It's a Tyler Perry film, and I didn't realize going in it was a Tyler Perry film, and I've seen it twice. That's how good the film is, and I probably would see it more. But if you haven't seen Nobody's Fool, you should check that out. It's actually heartwarming, a very heartwarming tale also. I mean, it's been marketed as just Tiffany Haddish and just straight on crazy, funny, just hilarious, and it is. It's all that and more. But Tyler Perry, what a great job you've done with that film. It was incredibly funny, incredibly touching in some parts. So it's really, really a good, solid film. So I really enjoyed that. And if you need a laugh, especially this holiday season, go see that movie. So is it Nobody's Fool, Nobody's Perfect? I can't remember now. My brain is not working. So I just want to say that it's been it was a really fun film to watch, and it's done very well at the box office, and I can't imagine someone not seeing it and not being excited about it. It looks like it cost about $20 million to make, roughly, and it's done about $29 million. It's Nobody's Fool. Not Nobody's Perfect, but Nobody is Perfect. Nobody's Fool with Tiffany Haddish. Go check it out. Wonderful film. Thank you very much for listening to Geek Homeworld. Also, if you're interested, I do have a radio show called Savannah on Film that I do in Savannah, where I talk to people in the film industry at all different levels, and that's Savannah on Film. We're on Facebook. You can go over there and like that page if you want to. Go to our YouTube channel where you can check out previous recorded episodes of Savannah on Film. And at the recording of this, today is November 20th, a couple days before Thanksgiving. So if you celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you and your family and friends have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And it's been difficult for me to get episodes out. I've only got out one last month and one this month, so I apologize for not being on the podcast enough here, but hopefully I'll be able to put more time into it in the future. So we'll see. But I want to thank everybody who's listened to the podcast for these 4+ years and counting. My 10+ years, or into my 10th year already, of podcasting overall. So thank you, everyone who's listened so far. Thank you very much. And I've got more to come. We'll try to do some more live events and different things like that, on maybe Facebook Live. I'm looking at that. So I tried a little bit of that today. It didn't work out so well because I didn't really promote it. So, but you live and you learn, right? So anyway, check us out. If you're interested about Savannah on Film, you can check it out on Facebook and YouTube as Savannah on Film. If you want to hear about the film industry, and it's actually quite interesting. It's doing quite well, and I'm very proud and thankful and humbled by the success of it. Also, you can check us out here at Geek Homeworld on Twitter. That's funny how I said Twitter. But you can check us out on Twitter at Geek Homeworld. And we're on geekhomeworld.libsyn.com is our main website. And also we have a growing kind of YouTube page there. I'm still working on Geek Homeworld on YouTube. You can go there and hit that subscribe button. and leave comments there. Nice ones are always appreciated. And I'm also on Twitter at Ciucevich on Twitter, and also at Geek Homeworld. You can reach me there too. Anyway, I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of the Geek Homeworld podcast, and thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving, and I hope you have a wonderful time. And see you later. Bye. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow and interact with us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes and leave a review, subscribe to us on YouTube, read our thoughts on Blogger. See you again on the Geek Homeworld.